Sup, nerds? I'm James.
Jimmy here.
I do have a question for you, Dad.
What is that, son?
Do you know what one of the most successful box office based movies is?
Why don't you tell me what it is?
Rocky Horror Picture Show.
How could that be?
Oh, I don't know, baby, because its box office never closed?
I do love that story. It's hilarious that literally it was a bomb, but then it's been going on since it was released.
Exactly. Its initial release was a failure by all means. It did not make a substantial enough money to be considered anything noteworthy. But its box office never closed. So it has continuously been making money in its box office from its release date in 1975. And it raises the question, what is a box office failure?
And that's what we're here to discuss today. We've seen a lot of news lately about, oh my goodness, this was a box office failure. And most recently, we've seen it with the Marvels. We saw it with Blue Beetle. We saw it with the latest Indiana Jones. And we've seen a trend basically since COVID of these movies being called box office bombs. But recently it came out that Blue Beetle is thriving on a streaming service. So what is a film box office bomb?
The only metric I would consider to be a box office failure is if it didn't meet or make back money, as in the budget that was spent on the film was not matched or made back, as in they made profit.
It really is annoying that you get movies like Tron, specifically Tron Legacy.
Tron was awesome.
It made money, like $200 million, but it was seen as a failure because it didn't make $1 billion. So now we've had to wait another 15, almost 20 years for another Tron film. And it's terribly annoying.
And to go on that, what's infuriating is that Disney has so much money to throw at whatever the hell they want, but they play it safe. And we've seen this happen continuously with a lot of their more recent films. They've played it safe. And I'm not saying they're bad. Some of them are decent films, but they've been playing it safe, and you can tell it is not winning them any favors.
Well, and that goes to something else. There are so many more ways to watch film. So the metric of a box office bomb is ridiculous in that almost every single major studio has some kind of licensing deal or a streaming service of their own. So we're going to see it for years on TV or streaming service. One of my favorite examples of this is the Monster Squad.
Very much so.
Released in the 80s, Fred Dekker, Shane Black, loved this movie, a lot of fun. It failed miserably at the box office. I have no idea why, but I remember HBO bought it and they showed it continuously. So now you have a generation my age that fell in love with this movie because it was on HBO. And guess who just recently saw it? James had already seen it, but I showed my 14-year-old daughter and she loved it. She saw some of the special effects, not the Stan Winston ones, but some of the other special effects were a little cheesy. But that's a great example. And we see this time and time again. So labeling something a box office failure is so frustrating because it's not necessarily a bad movie.
Exactly. And I would like to add on to that is that it's like a lot of these movies who are box office failures oftentimes end up becoming critical successes and deemed as paragons of film as an art. Let me give you a few examples. Rocky Horror Picture Show, obviously. 2001: A Space Odyssey, bet you didn't know that one. THX 1138, and Blade Runner. All of these were failures in their initial box office.
But another great example, and I guarantee it's running somewhere on TV at this exact moment, Shawshank Redemption.
Yes.
The cast is phenomenal. The story is phenomenal. The directing is phenomenal. Failed miserably at the box office.
And it's
on TV all the time. And more times than not, if I see it on TV, I'm watching because it's just such a good movie.
It's a beautiful film. And I think a lot of people are so worried about the business side of things. It's like, oh, it didn't make money. It's like, it's art, geniuses. One of the more recent examples with the Marvels is that it's like, it's a good movie. It has fun with its subject matter. It's just art to have fun. And I think a lot of people miss the fact that it's like, art doesn't always need to be fartsy and super revolutionary and always thought-provoking. Art can just be fun.
Well, and I think we'll see with the Marvels, once it hits Disney Plus, which I'm assuming that's where it's going, is we're going to see a Blue Beetle effect, where Blue Beetle, for several reasons, did not do well in the box office, but now on HBO Max or whatever it's called now, is doing phenomenal. And I think we're
Yes.
seeing a certain population that is not able to make it to the theater, probably on the younger end, and they're able to watch it at home. And that's exactly what they're doing. And you see the popularity explode. And to be honest, Blue Beetle was another one of those. Was it groundbreaking? No. Was it a good film? Yes. And frankly, it was one of the better ones that's come out of the DC world. And it's a character that isn't terribly familiar, much like the Marvels. Those characters aren't terribly familiar. So people are getting introduced to them on a streaming service where it's relatively free because you pay one price all month, or relatively cheap, I should say. And you get introduced to these characters. And that's where Brandon and I talked about. I'm curious to see if the Marvels has people going back and watching Captain Marvel and all the things that involve Captain Marvel, and Disney will be able to see that in their metrics on their service.
Yes, just because something is a box office failure doesn't mean it's bad, and that thought process needs to disappear quickly, because we are going to lose opportunities to see incredible films again. The reason we still get to have the luxury of Rocky Horror Picture Show 2001, Blade Runner, Shawshank Redemption, THX 1138, and any other box office failure you can think of is because they still had license and people were willing to watch them again and see just how good they were despite their failings. Art isn't purely business. And people, not people, you, our audience who's watching this, please remember that just because something didn't succeed at the box office doesn't mean it's bad. Be willing to watch something even if it is a failure, because I guarantee you, you're going to find something that's surprisingly good, and you're going to want to tell other people about it. Those other people will tell other people, and soon we'll have another cult classic on our hands. So please remember, failure doesn't mean bad. It doesn't always mean bad. I know what I'm doing.